The massive alien ship hung in Earth's orbit like a crystal chandelier, its surface shimmering with patterns of blue-white light that pulsed in gentle waves. Earth's scientific community watched in wonder as these patterns shifted and changed, eventually realizing they weren't just beautiful, they were a language. Tom Reed stood at the observation deck of the International Space Station, his hands pressed against the thick glass. Unlike his fellow diplomats who saw only pretty lights, he sensed something more. Each pulse sent tiny shivers through his mind, like whispers just beyond his hearing. "Mr. Reed, the Security Council is waiting," called out Director Wells, her voice tight with tension. "You're our best chance at making this work." Tom nodded, straightening his plain blue uniform. 3 previous diplomatic teams had failed to establish meaningful contact with the aliens who called themselves the Bright Ones. Each team had returned with the same puzzling report. The aliens seemed to think humans weren't truly conscious beings. The shuttle ride to the alien vessel passed in tense silence. Tom spent these precious minutes reviewing what little they knew about the Bright Ones. They were a matriarchal species, their bodies naturally bioluminescent, and they communicated in ways that seemed to go beyond simple speech or gesture. The docking procedure was smooth, almost eerily so. As the airlock cycled, Tom felt the whispers in his mind grow stronger, his enhanced empathic abilities. The reason he'd been chosen for this mission picked up something that felt like curiosity mixed with doubt. The inner doors opened to reveal a sight that took his breath away. The corridor seemed to be alive, its walls rippling with patterns of light that matched his heartbeat. 3 figures waited for them, their tall, elegant forms glowing with a soft inner light that shifted with their movements. The tallest of the 3 stepped forward. Her skin had a pearl-like quality, with waves of blue light flowing beneath its surface. "I am Lead Diplomat K," she said, her voice musical but clearly produced by some sort of translation device. "We welcome you aboard the Lightweaver." Tom noticed something odd immediately. While Kay's mouth formed words, complex patterns of light danced across her skin. Each pattern triggered faint echoes in his mind, carrying impressions of meaning that went deeper than the spoken words. "Thank you for having us," Tom replied, keeping his voice steady despite the growing pressure in his head. "I'm Diplomatic Empath Tom Reed." Kay's light patterns flickered in what he sensed was surprise. She turned to her companions, and their lights danced in rapid patterns. Tom caught fragments of their exchange: doubt, curiosity, confusion. The meeting moved to a chamber that seemed designed to mimic a human conference room, though the chairs were oddly shaped and everything pulsed with that same living light. As they discussed trade possibilities and cultural exchange, Tom focused on the underlying patterns, trying to make sense of the whispers in his mind. Then it happened. As Kay expressed her people's concerns about biological incompatibility, Tom unconsciously responded to both her words and the light patterns. "You mean you're worried about our lack of connection abilities," he said, describing the complex feeling he was picking up from their lights. The room went silent. The 3 Bright Ones froze, their natural glow dimming in what Tom sensed was shock. Kay leaned forward, her lights pulsing rapidly. "You perceived our true speech?" she asked, both aloud and in patterns of light. "Partially," Tom admitted. "It's like hearing words underwater, muffled but there." The Bright One's reaction was immediate and intense. Their lights blazed in complex patterns that made Tom's head spin. He caught fragments of their shock: impossible, empty vessel, potential, danger, opportunity. Kay finally turned back to him, her lights now pulsing in a calmer pattern. "Mr. Reed, you have just done something we thought impossible. No non-connected species has ever perceived even a hint of our true communication." As Tom left the meeting hours later, he knew something fundamental had changed. He had opened a door that no human had found before. What he didn't know was whether that door would lead to understanding between their species, or to dangers no one could predict. The whispers in his mind followed him all the way back to the station, growing fainter with distance, but never quite fading away. 1 week after the first meeting, Tom sat in his small office aboard the International Space Station, staring at recordings of failed diplomatic meetings. His head ached from hours of watching the same pattern repeat itself. Human diplomats talking, bright ones responding with growing frustration, and meetings ending in polite but clear failure. Now he understood why. The station's lights flickered, and Tom looked up. Through his window, he could see the Bright One's ship casting its ethereal glow across Earth's orbit. Even at this distance, he felt the faint whisper of their communications, like music played too quietly to make out the tune. "You look tired," said Director Wells, appearing at his door. "Found anything useful in those recordings?" Tom nodded, rubbing his temples. "The previous teams never had a chance," he explained. "It's like trying to convince someone you're real by passing them written notes when they can't read." He pulled up one recording, showing a Bright One diplomat's lights pulsing in complex patterns. "See how her lights change? That's their real conversation. The words they speak through translators are just courtesy noise." "And you can hear these conversations?" Wells asked, leaning forward with interest. "Not here exactly," Tom said, struggling to find the right words. "It's more like feeling someone's mood without seeing their face. I get impressions, emotions, sometimes fragments of ideas." The door chimed, and Kay entered, her pearl-like skin glowing softly in the station's artificial light. Two human guards stood nervously behind her, but she had insisted on this meeting. "You are correct," she said, both speaking and glowing. "What you call speech is to us like—" Her lights pulsed as she searched for the right comparison, like trying to describe a symphony using only hand signals. Tom felt the familiar pressure in his head as her true meaning rippled through the air. The sensation was stronger now than during their first meeting, as if his mind was slowly tuning into their frequency. "That's why your people think we're empty," Tom said slowly. "You can't feel our inner light." Kay's pattern shifted to something Tom recognized as agreement. "We share all thoughts, all feelings, all memories through the connection. When we met your kind, we sensed nothing within, like meeting creatures that cast no shadow." Director Wells frowned. "But we do communicate. We have art, music, literature." "Imagine," Kay interrupted, her lights dancing rapidly, "finding beautiful paintings made by the ocean's waves. Would you try to have a conversation with the waves?" Tom suddenly stood up, excitement breaking through his fatigue. "But I can sense your patterns. Not clearly, but it's there. That means humans must have the capacity for connection, even if it's buried deep." Kay's glow brightened. "Yes, this is why I came today. Our scientists have been studying the recordings of your responses to our patterns. They are disturbed by the implications." "Disturbed how?" Wells asked. "Because," Kay said, her lights pulsing in what Tom sensed was a mix of fear and fascination. "If humans have even a trace of connection ability, everything we believed about conscious species is wrong. And if one human can sense our patterns, others might learn." Tom finished. He felt Kay's approval at his understanding. "This is why the Council has ordered all diplomatic contact to cease immediately," Kay said, her glow dimming. "They fear what might happen if humans develop this ability further." Tom felt his heart sink, but beneath Kay's official announcement, he sensed something else in her patterns: determination, curiosity, and something like hope. As Kay left the office, she passed close to Tom. In that moment, her lights pulsed in a pattern meant only for him, one that carried a clear meaning despite its complexity. "Meet me tomorrow. There is more to discuss." Tom watched her leave, knowing he stood at a crossroads. He could respect the Council's wishes and back away from this discovery, or he could pursue this connection that seemed to defy everything both species believed possible. The whispers in his mind had grown stronger. They were no longer just whispers. They were becoming a call he couldn't ignore. The diplomatic chamber aboard the Lightweaver was empty except for Tom and Kay. They had been meeting in secret for 3 days, studying the strange connection that seemed to grow stronger with each passing hour. The room's living walls pulsed with soft light, matching the gentle patterns flowing across Kay's skin. "Focus on the pattern," Kay said, her voice barely a whisper as her lights danced. "Don't try to understand it. Just feel it." Tom closed his eyes, letting his mind drift. The whispers that had once been so faint now formed clear impressions in his mind. Colors, feelings, fragments of thoughts, all flowing from Kay's glowing form into his consciousness. Then something changed. The pattern shifted, and suddenly Tom wasn't just receiving impressions, he was sending them back. A burst of surprise and joy escaped from his mind, reflected in a flash of bright light that rippled across Kay's skin. Kay jumped back, her natural glow flaring brilliant white. "Impossible," she gasped, both in words and light speech. You responded in true pattern." Before Tom could answer, the chamber's doors burst open. 3 senior members of the Bright Ones Council swept in, their bodies blazing with angry patterns that made Tom's head spin. Lead Diplomat Kay. The tallest one's lights pulsed with such intensity that Tom could feel her fury without trying. "You have violated our most sacred protocols." First Elder, Kay started to explain, but the council member's next pattern silenced her. "You attempted to establish a connection with a non-sentient species." The First Elder's lights flashed in sharp, painful bursts. "This goes against everything we believe, everything we are." Tom stepped forward, fighting against the dizzying storm of light patterns filling the room. "I'm not non-sentient," he said firmly. "I can prove it. I can show you." The council members turned to him, their lights dimming in what he now recognized as shock. The human had spoken not just with his voice, but with a faint shimmer of light pattern that rippled through the air. "What have you done?" The Second Elder demanded of Kay. "Teaching our ways to someone who can learn them," Kay finished. Her own patterns had steadied, showing determination rather than fear. Tom isn't just receiving patterns anymore. He's beginning to generate them. The Third Elder moved closer to Tom, studying him with both her eyes and her light sense. "If what you say is true, it changes everything we thought we knew about consciousness itself." "It's dangerous," the First Elder insisted. "If humans can learn to connect, who knows what damage they could do? They're violent, unpredictable." "We're curious," Tom interrupted, deliberately focusing on projecting his feelings along with his words. A faint but clear pattern of light shimmered around him. "We seek understanding, connection." The room fell silent. Even the walls seemed to still their eternal dance of light. What Tom had just done, generating a visible light pattern as a human, should have been impossible. Kay, the First Elder's pattern was now tinged with fear. "You will cease all contact with the human immediately. And you," she turned to Tom, "are hereby banned from all Bright One vessels and facilities." But as the council members moved to escort Tom out, Kay's pattern flared with a brilliance that made everyone step back. "No," she said, her lights forming a complex pattern Tom understood perfectly. Determination, defiance, and hope. "If one human can learn to connect, others will follow," Kay continued. "We can either help guide them, or fear what they might become without our guidance." Tom felt the council's patterns shift from anger to uncertainty. They knew Kay was right. This discovery couldn't be undone. As he was led from the chamber, Tom caught Kay's final pattern message, hidden beneath her formal farewell. "This isn't over. Meet me at the usual place. What we've started here is too important to stop now." He left the Lightweaver that day officially banned from returning. But the light patterns now flowing through his mind told him that sometimes the most important connections had to be made in secret. The abandoned observation module on the dark side of the space station became their secret meeting place. Tom sat cross-legged on the floor, watching Earth spin slowly beneath them while waiting for Kay's signal. The council's ban had been in place for 2 weeks, but that hadn't stopped them from meeting. A soft glow appeared outside the window. Kay's personal shuttle, its lights dimmed to avoid detection. Tom felt her presence before she entered, her patterns now as clear to him as spoken words. "I have news," Kay said as she entered, her excitement visible in both her rapid light patterns and her hurried movements. "Our scientists finished analyzing your brain scans." Tom stood up, noticing how Kay's glow reflected off the module's walls, creating a dance of light and shadow. "What did they find?" Kay pulled out a small device that projected a hologram of two brains, one human, one bright one. Her lights pulsed with scholarly intensity as she explained. "Look here." She pointed to a specific area in both brains. "The structure humans call the empathy center. It's almost identical to our connection nodes." Tom leaned closer to the hovering images. "But if they're so similar, why haven't humans been able to connect before?" "Because Kay's patterns shifted to show a mixture of wonder and sadness. Your species has forgotten how to use them. These centers in your brains are like muscles that haven't been used for thousands of years." She adjusted the hologram, showing historical brain scans of both species. "Our theory is that ancient humans once had abilities similar to ours, but something made you lose them." Tom felt a chill run down his spine. "And now they're waking up." "Why me? Why now?" Kay's lights danced with excitement. "We think it's because of your enhanced empathy. Your brain already uses these pathways more than most humans. Meeting us, being exposed to our patterns, it's like your brain remembered something it used to know." As if to prove her point, Tom felt his mind reach out, creating a faint pattern of light around him. It was weaker than a bright one's glow, but definitely there. "There's more," Kay said, her patterns showing nervousness now. "We found records in our oldest archives. Stories about another species that could connect, long ago. They vanished, but before they did, they warned about something." "Warned about what?" "The dangers of connecting too deeply too quickly. Their scientists called it pattern overflow, when a developing connection ability tries to handle too much information at once." Kay's lights dimmed with concern. "It can be fatal." Tom absorbed this information, feeling the weight of its implications. "Is that why the Council is so afraid? They think humans might hurt themselves trying to connect?" "Partly," Kay admitted, "but they're more afraid of what might happen if humans master the connection. Your species tends to move very quickly with new discoveries." Tom couldn't argue with that. Humanity's rapid technological advancement was well documented. "So what do we do?" Kay's patterns shifted to something more determined. "We continue our research in secret. You're already connecting more strongly than we thought possible, if we can understand how and why." She was interrupted by a warning light flashing on her shuttle's control panel. "Council patrol," she explained quickly. "I have to go." But before she left, she sent him a complex pattern that carried more meaning than words ever could. It spoke of hope, of discovery, of the potential for something greater than either of their species had imagined. Tom watched her shuttle disappear into the darkness of space. His mind was buzzing with new questions. If humans had once had this ability, what else had they forgotten? And more importantly, what would happen when they remembered? He looked down at his hands, concentrating until a faint glow appeared around them. The pattern was weak but growing stronger every day. Soon, he knew, he wouldn't be the only human who could do this. The question was, were they ready for what that meant? The emergency alarm blared through the space station at 3 a.m. Earth time. Tom rushed from his quarters, following the urgent pattern call he felt from Kay. He knew something was wrong. Her patterns had never felt this disturbed before. He found her in their secret meeting place, her usual pearl-like glow flickering erratically. The observation module's windows showed the Lightweaver in the distance, its surface dancing with unusual light patterns. "The Council knows," Kay said without greeting, her lights pulsing with fear and urgency. "They know everything. About our meetings, our research, all of it." Tom felt his heart sink. "How?" "My research partner." Kay's patterns showed deep hurt. "She reported us. But that's not the worst part." She pulled out a data crystal, its surface glowing with stored information. "Look at these readings from your last brain scan." The holographic display showed Tom's neural patterns over the past weeks. Even he could see the dramatic changes, areas of his brain lighting up in patterns that looked more and more like Kay's species. Your connection abilities are growing too fast, Kay explained, her lights showing both awe and terror. The neural pathways are expanding at an exponential rate. If this continues, she couldn't finish the sentence, but her light patterns told him everything. I'll die, Tom said quietly, understanding the unspoken warning. Kay nodded. Pattern overflow, just like the ancient records warned. Your brain is trying to rebuild connection pathways that have been dormant for thousands of years. It's like trying to channel a river through a garden hose. Tom sat down heavily, watching Earth rotate beneath them. Can we stop it? Yes. Kay's patterns shifted to show determination. But the Council's solution is to cut off all contact between our species. They believe that without exposure to our patterns, your abilities will go dormant again. And you disagree. Kay's lights flared. It's too late for that. The process has already started in you. Without guidance, without understanding what's happening. Her pattern showed images of neural pathways burning out, of minds breaking under pressure they couldn't handle. There's another way, she continued, her glow steadying. But it's dangerous. And if we fail, the Council will use it as proof that humans should never be allowed to develop these abilities. Tom felt her fear, her hope, her determination, all flowing through the growing connection between them. Tell me. A full neural connection, Kay said, her patterns deadly serious. Not the partial ones we've been practicing. A complete merging of consciousness, like we use in our most sacred ceremonies. It might help your mind stabilize the changes, learn to handle the connection properly. And if it doesn't work? Kay's lights dimmed. Best case, mental burnout. Worst case, death. For both of us. The Council has forbidden this kind of connection, even between our own people except under strict supervision. Between different species, it's never been done. Outside the window, Tom could see more ships approaching the Lightweaver. The Council was mobilizing. How long do we have before they find us? He asked. Minutes, maybe less. Kay's patterns showed growing urgency. Tom, I can't make this choice for you. But you need to understand, this isn't just about us anymore. If we succeed, it proves humans can safely develop these abilities. If we fail, they'll make sure no human ever gets the chance again. Tom finished. He stood up, looking at the approaching ships, then back at Kay. In her light patterns, he saw everything they'd learned together, everything they hoped for, and everything they stood to lose. When I was chosen for this mission, he said slowly, they picked me because I was good at understanding others. At building bridges, he turned to Kay, his own faint light patterns growing stronger with determination. Let's build the biggest bridge of all. Kay's patterns exploded with a mixture of joy, fear, and resolve. As the Council ships drew closer, she reached out her hands to him, her glow intensifying. The time for choices was over. Now came the moment of truth. Time seemed to slow in the observation module as Tom and Kay stood facing each other. Their combined glow cast dancing shadows on the walls, his faint human light mixing with her brilliant bright one patterns. Once we start, Kay said, her patterns showing both fear and determination. We can't stop until it's complete. Are you ready? Tom nodded, trying to steady his racing heart. Through their growing connection, he could feel the Council ships drawing closer. They had minutes at most. Remember what we practiced? Kay's voice was gentle, but her patterns showed intense focus. Don't fight the flow. Don't try to control it. Just let it happen. They joined hands, and immediately Tom felt the difference. This wasn't like their previous practice sessions. Kay's consciousness pressed against his mind like an ocean wave about to break. Now, she whispered. The wave crashed. Tom's world exploded into light and sensation. Every pattern, every thought, every memory Kay had ever experienced flooded into his mind. He saw her childhood among the glowing spires of her homeworld, felt her joy when she was chosen for diplomatic service, experienced her wonder at first seeing Earth. But it was too much. His mind began to buckle under the strain. Through the chaos, he felt K's patterns guiding him. Asterisk, don't fight it. Flow with it. Like water joining water asterisk. Tom stopped trying to understand the flood of information. Instead, he let himself become part of it. His consciousness expanded, stretched, transformed. The pain was incredible. Every neuron felt like it was on fire. He heard screaming and dimly realized it was his own voice. Council ships docking. The station's AI announced calmly. Security breach in Section E. They were out of time. But they couldn't stop. Stopping now would destroy them both. Through their joined minds, Tom felt K's own pain. This was hurting her too. The human consciousness she was connecting with was alien, different, overwhelming. But she held on, her patterns wrapping around his mind like protective bands of light. Asterisk, focus on me. Asterisk, her thoughts came clearly now. Asterisk, show me who you are. Asterisk. Tom opened himself completely. He shared everything. His childhood dreams, his fears, his hopes. The moment he first felt the Bright One's patterns, the wonder of discovering the connection, his growing feelings for K. Their minds twisted, turned, fought, and finally merged. The pain vanished. In its place came understanding deeper than anything either species had imagined possible. They were no longer just Tom and K. They were something new, something that had never existed before. Through their joined consciousness, they felt the council members burst into the module, their patterns blazing with shock and fear. But it was too late to stop what was happening. Light exploded from the joined pair, so bright that even the Bright Ones had to shield their eyes. When it faded, Tom and K stood separate again, but changed. Their lights pulsed in perfect synchronization. Impossible. The first Elder's patterns showed disbelief. They survived. They succeeded. Tom looked at his hands, now glowing with patterns as clear and strong as any Bright One's. But they weren't just Bright One patterns. They were something new, a hybrid of human neural activity and alien light speech. Kay stepped forward. Her own patterns changed as well, showing traces of human neural structure. Now you see, she said to the council, both in light and voice. We were wrong about humans. They don't lack the ability to connect. They just need to remember how. Tom felt the council's patterns shift from fear to wonder. Through his new awareness, he could sense the news spreading across their collective consciousness. The impossible had been done. A human had fully connected. He turned to Kay, their patterns mingling in a dance of shared joy and triumph. They had done more than prove humans could connect. They had shown that consciousness itself had no boundaries, not between species, not between different forms of life. The bridge had been built. Now they just had to help others cross it. 6 months after the historic connection between Tom and Kay, the observation module had been transformed into something new. What was once a secret meeting place was now the first interspecies connection academy. Today, it buzzed with activity as both humans and Bright Ones gathered for a special ceremony. Tom stood before the large window, his natural glow now a constant presence, watching as another group of human students practiced their first light patterns. Each of them had been carefully chosen, people with high empathy scores, like him, whose minds might be ready to remember this ancient ability. They're progressing faster than we expected, Kay said, joining him at the window. Her patterns showed pride and satisfaction. After their shared connection, she had become something new too. Part ambassador, part teacher, part bridge between worlds. The council had eventually accepted the truth, especially after their scientists confirmed that Tom and Kay's successful connection had changed both of them at a genetic level. Their DNA now showed traces of each other's species, proving that consciousness could literally reshape physical form. Ready for the graduation? Kay asked, her patterns mixing with his in the familiar dance they now shared. Tom nodded, turning to face the assembled crowd. 20 human students stood in a line, each glowing with their own newly awakened patterns. Behind them, Their Bright One mentors watched with pride. When I first met the Bright Ones, Tom began his speech, both speaking and glowing. We thought we were separated by an impossible barrier. They couldn't sense our consciousness. We couldn't see their patterns. Both sides believed the gap could never be bridged. He paused, letting his patterns show the memory of those early days. Through their growing connection abilities, every person in the room could feel the weight of that time. But we were wrong, Kay continued, stepping forward. What we thought was a wall was really just a door that had been closed for thousands of years. All it needed was the courage to open it. The graduating students' patterns brightened with pride. Each of them had faced the same challenges Tom had: the pain of awakening dormant abilities, the fear of pattern overflow, the difficult process of learning to control their new awareness. But they had succeeded, each in their own way. Today marks more than just your graduation, Tom said. It marks the beginning of a new chapter for both our species. Each of you will go on to teach others, to help more humans remember what was forgotten. Through their shared connection, everyone in the room could feel the truth of his words. Already, hundreds more potential students have been identified. The ability to connect seemed to be spreading, as if humanity's collective consciousness was slowly waking from a long sleep. But remember, Kay added, her patterns showing the seriousness of her words, with this gift comes responsibility. The connection must never be forced. It must grow naturally, in its own time. The ceremony continued as each student demonstrated their new abilities, their patterns mixing with those of their mentors in beautiful displays of light and consciousness. Tom and Kay watched proudly, their own patterns dancing together in perfect harmony. Later, as the celebration wound down, Tom stood again at his favorite window. Earth spun below, while the Lightweaver hung in orbit above, its surface blazing with congratulatory patterns visible even at this distance. Thinking deep thoughts, Kay asked, joining him. Wondering what happens next, Tom admitted. This is just the beginning, isn't it? Kay's patterns showed agreement and excitement. The Council's scientists believe that as more humans awaken their connection abilities, it might spark a change in your entire species, a step forward in evolution. Tom smiled, watching his own patterns reflect off the window. All because one human and one Bright One dared to try something impossible. Not impossible, Kay corrected, her patterns merging with his in the way that had become as natural as breathing. Just forgotten. And now we remember, Tom finished. Their combined glow lit up the darkness of space, a beacon of hope and change, showing both their species the way forward into a more connected future. The bridge had been built, and it was growing stronger every day.